Why, when I visit Africa, all I feel is welcoming energy and kindness, but when black people are coming to Europe, there's 99% of a chance they're going to face racism at some point. I was thinking about that, and honestly, I haven't found any logical explanation for that, and I'll explain reasons now. I'll be using Nigeria as an example because I was there and I feel like I know the most about their culture compared to other African countries, but I'm sure you can apply what I'm going to say to majority of African countries. First of all, let's start with historical point of view. If there's anyone that should feel somehow towards people other color, I think it's Africans. Why? We as white people are the ones that stole resources from African countries. In fact, we're still doing it. Second of all, during colonial times, we are the ones that went to Africa, started telling people that were perfectly happy with the way they're governing themselves, with the way they execute the law, and with the way they're living. We are the ones that went there, told them there's a problem, and started killing people just because they didn't want to live or accept the way we wanted them to live. Let's take colonial times in Nigeria as an example. Britain found a land that is rich in resources, so they took over, of course, by using weapons that were known to Nigerians. They took over, they imposed their language, their way of schooling. They combined states that didn't have anything in common with themselves into one country for the ruling purposes, which of course caused problems in the past and is still causing problems up till today. They did that to people that didn't even have access to 1% of weapons that Britain had. How come? In Europe, there was a First World War, Second World War, but we used comparatively similar weapons. I understand that. But you, as a white person, coming to a black nation that is living fine and is okay with their way of living, and using stuff that doesn't give even 1% of a chance of survival to those nations is just not right. It's a slaughter. It's not a war. Keeping that in mind, I have never heard any Nigerian saying that they don't like British people because they did something in the past. And also, my husband haven't met or encountered with anybody that thought the same way he's Nigerian. Meanwhile, me as a Polish person, I can say that there are still Polish people, maybe in older generation, that feel somehow towards Germans or Russians just because what they did in Second World War. If black people came to Europe and caused colonialism and were still stealing our resources, I would understand that we don't want them to visit. But it's the opposite way. We are stealing their resources. We destroy their countries. And now we're not open for them to come to Europe. How come? Where's the logic? Let's take traveling and relocating as an example. If I want to go to Africa now as a white person, I apply for the visa online in majority of cases, and I get my visa within a few days without dealing with any embassy. If I want to go to work to Spain or Germany, I can do it just like that. So now let's take Nigerians as an example. If they want to come to Poland, for instance, they need to deal with embassy that, first of all, is not answering the phone calls, not answering the emails. And I know that because I was texting them at some point in time. They need to deal with the process that is long, even for months, sometimes for years. When they apply for the visa, they need to show they're financially stable, that they have a degree, that their school fees are sometimes even paid, that they have a work already in Poland. How come? Imagine you want to come to South Africa and you already need to show that you have a job in South Africa. How are you going to do that without being in South Africa? It's ridiculously hard to even imagine. So when you see a black person in Europe, you should see a person who is very ambitious, who is very intelligent, and who dealt with immensely harshly process that required probably a lot of tears. Maybe if you're a lady, maybe not if you're a guy. But you should have respect to those people. They've dealt with hell, and I know that because I've dealt with Polish embassy in Nigeria. They don't respond. I needed to text the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Poland to reach the Polish embassy in Nigeria. How does it work? Now imagine you're applying for work or school and you need to deal with them. You should have a respect when you see a black person in Poland for sure. And as white people, we should be proud that black people want to come to Europe. Why? Again, Nigeria and Britain as an example. Nigeria in the past century as a country didn't know English. They learned English within a century to the point that now Nigeria has more English speakers than Great Britain. They learned that within a year, without proper schooling system, without great amount of books and courses of English. And Polish people, I can use as an example, we still don't know English. We have English at school. We have immense amount of courses that you can attend, books in almost every bookshop that you can learn English from. And yet, when an English-speaking person comes to Poland, he will most probably suffer to communicate with Polish people. If a nation could do that within 1 century, you should imagine how of an intelligent people it has within themselves. So now, let's imagine again. As a white person, I'm going to Africa. I don't need to prove anything to get there. I don't need to prove I'm financially stable or I have a job or I'm a student. I just can visit. And then I'm like a star in Africa. Everyone wants to talk, wants to smile. Everyone is welcoming and kind. Meanwhile, as a black person, if you're in Europe, in majority of the cases, you needed to go through hell to get there. You're supporting your family, which is back in Africa. You're working very hard. You need to deal with formalities that sometimes don't even make sense to Europeans. And you're surviving, you're living fine. Majority of Africans that are here are having a good job and living a good life. How does it work? Where is the logic? White people are seeing black people in Europe and they feel like there is this inner racism burning inside of them and they need to show their aggressions towards them. Why? Those people are supporting their families while being here. Those people faced the governments and the embassies that you wouldn't be able to handle. Trust me, you wouldn't. It would cause you cry every single night. Why? Where is the logic? White people are still extremely racist, which I can say as a Polish person living in Poland. Meanwhile, we are the ones who stole resources from Africa. We're still doing that. We caused problems in the countries in Africa that can be easily fixed in the next centuries. And we're still making their life harder by not accepting them in Europe, even though they meet all the requirements. You might be the smartest guy in Africa and still face problems to get here. How does it work? And when you get here, you still need to face racism. And racism is most common within uneducated people, and it makes sense, because if you know all of that, if you dig into history, if you know and experience the process they need to face up till today, you would have nothing but respect to them. You would admire them. You would be happy they're coming and they're enriching our economy. That's how I see it. Racism is the most common within uneducated people who don't have any ambitions in their lives, who just watch TV and drink beer. So if you're racist, you're probably in that group and you don't know anything meaningful about history and about the past and the damage we've done as white people to black people. If you're a racist, you must be scared of the power that black people have. They dealt with colonialism. They learned language and they learned law and schooling systems within 1 century that was completely new to them. They're managing embassies and they're managing long processes to get to Europe, and they're still winning their lives. When you see an African person in Poland, there is 85% of a chance they're doing very fine and they're still supporting their families back in the country. So if you're racist, I feel sorry for you, and the only way I can explain your expression of aggression towards those people is that you're scared and you're jealous. There's no other explanation. You probably have never traveled outside of the country. You've never read historical book about culture that is not yours. You probably have never faced any embassy in your life. So when you see a person that did all of that and is still winning, is still happy, and is still giving kindness to all the people, you're just scared. And I get that, but that's not right, and you should get rid of all the aggression and anger that you have within yourself, because it's not doing anything towards black people. It's just damaging yourself.